future initiatives. The plan is ambitious and includes considerable emphasis on recruitment and retention of members. The board readily approved the plan as presented, and it will be presented and explained to members incrementally at a series of meetings so that we can all get on board and grow our club and make it what we want it to be. Rebecca Maxwell also reported on the very successful district conference last week, and though it was virtual, there was a very large number of District 5910 Rotarians who attended. Special thanks to those Rotarians who attended the Rise Against Hunger project in Cleveland on Saturday, and I understand they did an amazing job. John Lee, Community Services Project Chair, presented a proposal he and a group of club members have been working on with 100 Black men of Greater Beaumont and the Rotary Club of Port Arthur. The project has 3 component parts and will involve working with BISD and the Port Arthur ISD, primarily with 8th grade through 12th grade students. The board approved the project to move forward and made a commitment to allocate funding for the inaugural year. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I want to also, she's not here with us today, but a big thank you to Rebecca Maxwell for putting on such a successful district conference last week. That was a tremendous amount of work and a really great job. One of the persons from our club was recognized on Friday. John Quigley was inducted into the Roll of Fame. So congratulations to John. He has been with our club for many, many years and served as president 1998 to 99 and just has a whole slew of accomplishments under his belt. So we want to congratulate John on that recognition. Also, I want to congratulate Deborah Drago. She completed Rotary Leadership Institute Part 2. So that is a really interesting online course. Once you finish Part 3, then we can go through the training program and we can be able to present that district-wide. So congratulations to you on that hard work, Deborah. And then I'm wearing this really neat medal that we got from the food bank in the bronze category for the number of hours that we had during last calendar year. So that was a lot of that was done under President Joe's term. We did several projects with the food bank throughout the year, and it earned us a Point of Light award that I was proud to pick up for our club a couple of weeks ago. So now to introduce our speaker, past President Lynn Castle, Executive Director, Art Museum of Southeast Texas.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Chester Jourdan Jr. He's the Executive Director of the American Red Cross, Southeast Texas and Deep East Texas. He's been there since August of 2014. As an Executive Director, American Red Cross, Chester serves in a leadership role to improve the resiliency of the communities served by the Red Cross. His leadership helps community and business leaders respond to and recover from natural and man-made disasters, as well as promoting the growth, quality, and constituency of the Red Cross programs and services throughout the Golden Triangle and Deep East Texas counties. Chester is also a Red Cross disaster responder as well, locally, regionally, and nationally. He responds to as a member of the external relations team. For example, he responded to the Sabine River flooding, Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Barry, Tropical Storm Imelda, to name just a few of the disasters locally. Regionally, he's also responded to the Santa Fe High School shooting, the flooding of South Texas. Nationally, he's responded to Hurricane Florence, Hurricane Matthew, California fires, not flowers, fires, and Nebraska flooding and Hurricane Dorian. His educational achievements include a Bachelor of Science in Political Science from Stephen F. Austin State University in Nacogdoches, a Master's of Art in Urban and Regional Affairs from the University of Texas at Arlington. He was in the United States Army Army and received a number of honors there, too many to even list. And he served from October of 1982 to October of 1986. He's also received a number of other honors aside from that, including the Secretary of Transportation Meritorious Achievement Awards in 1994 and again in 1998. Throughout his professional career, Chester has had the privilege of serving for a number of nonprofit boards, communities, commissions, and task forces at the local, regional, and national level. Please join me in welcoming Chester Jourdan Jr.
Sorry. Till Tim gets back.
There we go. Good afternoon. Larry had told me and Cindy had told me that I only had 2 hours, so I'm going to try to keep it to 2 hours. Now, I've only got 87 slides to get through, so we'll try to do it as quickly as we can. No, I know you're very, very good about getting out prior to 1 o'clock. It's 12 to 1. Back in the day, one of the things that Lynn didn't mention was, if you remember, many of you I met many years ago when I was at the Southeast Texas Regional Planning Commission. And I spent, how many remember Don Kelly? When Don retired, they hired me. And so I was there about 6.5 years after that. And I was a member of this club. And it's pretty amazing to me, the history of this club, the impact this club and its members have had over those years, 100 plus years here in Greater Beaumont. It is pretty amazing. And so thank you for your service. Thank you for your commitment to the food bank and the great work that they do there. Dan is now retired, or he's moved to Virginia now. We have a new leadership there, but their work is pretty phenomenal. We work very closely with the food bank, and they're so needed now, I would argue now more than ever before. So thank you for your commitment. Thank you for what you continue to do to serve this community here in Southeast Texas. And I appreciate that. And those who you serve also appreciate that as well. As Lynn mentioned, as I am with the American Red Cross, Pat, I saw Pat sitting right there just a minute ago past me, said, I hadn't seen you in a while. Where you been? And I said, well, let's see. Are we gonna meet? So they're working on it. There we go. Pat said, where you been? Well, so my area, Southeast and Deep East Texas, covers 14 counties. And so we have everything from Beaumont, Port Arthur, Orange, to Polk County, to Trinity, Houston, Angelina, Nacogdoches, Shelby, Center, Sabine, Hemphill, and it comes back down along the state line back to Orange. So we have a pretty good size area. If you were to take those communities, particularly Southeast Texas, and look at them, look at every community across the nation, we're part of what's called the Texas Gulf Coast region in the American Red Cross. 51 counties from Nacogdoches all the way down to South Texas, all along the Texas Gulf Coast. One of the things we have a lot of is what? Disasters, right? We have a lot of disasters. We are only second in the nation, our region is second in the nation, in the region, in the number of major disasters in the last 5 years. So you think about that for a second. This chapter, this area is number 1 in the region in the number of disasters just in the last 5 years. Go back to Sabine River, Harvey, Imelda, Laura, Delta, Zeta, Port Neches refinery blast, plus all the other things that kind of happen between that. I mean, we continue to name them. Texas winter storm that just hit us, and then obviously COVID on top of that. We keep using the word, unfortunately, we keep using the word of unprecedented. I wish we would be able to throw that word out because we have been in very unprecedented times in the last 5 years, generational unprecedented in the last 5 years. It's pretty amazing to me to think that the number 1 major disaster in our nation's history, Harvey, hit right here, 70.5 inches of rain in 5 days. Think the impact that that's had on our community. I think what's happened since then and happened prior to that. We've had communities and homes that had not flooded in 50 plus years, the entire life that somebody had lived there, and all of a sudden they've been flooded 4 times now, just in that short period of time. And so huge part of that, being able to help our community recover is groups and organizations like the Beaumont Rotary Club, or the Rotary Club of Beaumont, I guess. And so thank you for that. But also United Way, I see Karen sitting here, the impact that they have in this community. United Way in Port Arthur and Orange and Lufkin and Nacogdoches, the impact that they have of bringing a lot of resources together and be able to impact those in the community. The Foundation of Southeast Texas, the impact it has. The Food Bank, we've already mentioned that. Nutrition and Services for Seniors, Southeast Texas Civilian Task Force, Salvation Army, some other place. Think what this community would be or wouldn't be without those organizations and the impact they have. We're not a Houston. We don't have multi-million mega organizations that come in or step in a moment's notice and do things. We have to do it collectively. So the way we do that is through an organization called VOAD, Volunteer Organizations Active in Disaster, VOAD. And it's those organizations coming together to recognize and understand that no one of us can do it alone. It takes all of us. And so just wanted to say that up front because sometimes that gets lost in the shuffle. I'm going to do a presentation on Red Cross, but this is really not about Red Cross. It really is about this community and our ability to come together and have an impact and help our community recover, help our communities, our cities recover, help our individuals and our organizations recover, because that is the essence of it. That's what we're about. That's what we do every day. The Red Cross has been around a long time. I think if we go back to the slide prior to that, go back one, go back two. I don't think I can go back. Go back to the very first slide. Can you do that? Let's see if she's going to be able to do that. Red Cross was founded in 1881 by Clara Barton, and there's a group of her friends who lived in Washington, D.C. at the time. And she worked in the patent office, and they were beginning to see all these things happen in DC during the Civil War. And so her and her friends got together and started providing care to folks coming off the battlefields. And that care led to her work in the White House, for Abraham Lincoln's White House, to doing something called, we still do today, Red Cross still today, called Restoring Family Links. She helped individuals who were hurt, who were dying on the battlefield, to reconnect with their families. Remember back in 1881, or during the Civil War, 65, 61, 62, there was no cell phones, right? There was no way to call up. There was no internet. There was no way to connect with anybody. So it could be that the individuals were lost in time. So she started an office in the White House to help reconnect those battlefield soldiers back with their families to figure out what happened to them. Some 15 years later, that formed and that came what we know today as the American Red Cross. So it's for the first 10 or so years, Red Cross was really a service to our military. It was really a service to our veterans. It really was a service to armed forces. It wasn't until 10 years or so later, after 1881, that the disaster stuff came about in a response to a disaster in Pennsylvania. And that was really what we're most known for. But our heart and our soul and our connection is really with our veterans and our veterans' families and our veterans' communities and the armed services. 35 or so years ago, I got deployed to the Middle East. And at the time, I was in Fort Bragg. My wife was pregnant with her oldest daughter. She went back to Lufkin. She grew up in Lufkin. Her family was Lufkin. She went back to Lufkin, and that's where my daughter was born at. It was the Red Cross that notified my command. That's how I found out about the birth of my daughter, was the American Red Cross. Today, if you go to Iraq or Kuwait, Afghanistan, or Bosnia, any of those countries, there's a Red Cross office there. And we still do exactly that today. We still provide the emergency communications and notifications today. If a local soldier goes into a local individual goes into the military today, they go through MEPS, they go through a processing center in Houston. They fill out a little postcard. Little postcard's a Red Cross postcard, and we send a packet to the family of that soldier, sailor, airman, Marine. So because they may or may not have ever been in the service before. And so it gives them all the information they need. So if there's an emergency that happens at a home, unfortunately, something happens, grandma, grandfather, mom or dad, they notify the Red Cross. And we notify the command about that, and we'll fly, with their permission of the command, we'll fly that individual home so they can be in the home for that service. We still do that today. We've done that throughout our nation's history, or throughout our history of the organization. That's something I'm most proud of because of my direct connection with Red Cross, and that's how I first got connected to the organization. How many here served in the military? So if you serve in the military, you know something about Red Cross, because there's old sayings about, if you know anything about the military you want to know, come to me. If you have a personal issue, go see Red Cross, you know, and that's the way it was. And it still is that way today. But we've been around a long time. This is our mission statement. Obviously, it's all about disasters and responding to disasters. We still can do that, and that's what we're a big part of. We're one of the most recognized brands around the world, second only to Coca-Cola, if you do any kind of studies or surveys or whatever. These are the things we do. The one at the top I want to mention real quickly, blood services. Pretty much in the state of Texas, Red Cross does not collect blood. We have a little distribution facility in downtown Houston. We have a testing lab, and we do a lot of work with FDA and those sort of things. We have a little bit of collection we do up in the Dallas area, and a little bit with some other nonprofits in San Antonio. Nationwide, the way blood is collected in the United States is about 70 or so nonprofits do that collection. And they do the distribution. They have the connections with the hospitals and the connection with that. 41% of that nation's blood supply, the total of the 100%, 41% of that is collected by the Red Cross around the nation. We are far and away the largest blood collector and supplier of blood in our country. And so it's pretty interesting. You don't see it here. That's not what we do here, and that's not what we do in Texas. But in most parts of the United States, folks know us either by the disaster stuff or by blood services. Mention this is the American Red Cross of Southeast and Deep East Texas. We're one of 4 chapters in the Texas Gulf Coast region. There's 3 regions in the state of Texas, and there is 50 regions in the nation. There's 236 chapters, which we're one of on the humanitarian side. This particular chapter, if you'd gone back in 1917, every community at that point in time, and even much later than that, had its own individual Red Cross chapter. So Port Arthur had one, Beaumont had one, Orange had one, Lufkin had one, Nacogdoches had one. And most of those, particularly in our area, Houston came about in 1916. Most of these came about in 1917. It really was a call by the president for the communities to come together, create Red Cross chapters, Red Cross clubs to support the U.S. entry into World War I. And that's really how a lot of our chapters came about during that time frame. So almost 4 years ago, we celebrated our 100-year anniversary in 2017, had a big gala right here at this event. Matter of fact, in this room, we had a big event right here as well. How many here know Larry David? Larry recently passed away early last year. He was a lay deacon at the Basilica, very big in the Catholic Diocese, the Catholic Church, but he was also a longtime chapter board member of the American Red Cross. His great-grandfather, Larry's great-grandfather, helped start the chapter in 1917 in Orange, Texas. But if you go back and look at the one in Orange when it got started, and you think about the Starks and the Claybars and the Malloys, you think about all those groups and organizations, they're the ones that started the Red Cross in Orange. But that's true in every community. Every community was really was the community leaders. It was the Beaumont Rotary clubs. It was the individuals, there are clubs like this that started the Red Cross chapters across the nation, particularly during this time frame. Like I said, we're 14 counties. It's a pretty good size area. Pat asked me where I've been at. Well, I spent a lot of time in those counties, in those communities. We have if you on Interstate 10 going east, via MLK exit, we have a big office there with a warehouse. If you go to Lufkin, anybody knows where Ray's Burger's at in Lufkin, Texas, on Timberland. You take a right there at Ray's. We have a big facility and an office and a warehouse right there off of Park Street there. Used to be an old Sears facility back 40, 50 years ago. We have an office in downtown Nacogdoches. We have a small office in San Augustine, a small office in Woodville as well. And then the Beaumont Chamber of Commerce, we have an office in the back of that building facility as well. So we have a large presence. But most of our presence is about individuals. It's about bodies. Most of our communities do not have offices. Matter of fact, remember when we had the office on East Tex Freeway? Remember the old office back in the day on Magnolia, downtown Beaumont? You know, those facilities are all long gone now. We do have a chapter board. We have 16 members that are on chapter board. We have 5 committees, and I mentioned our offices. Many of you know Sky Thompson. Sky is our board chair, as well as with Tracy Simon and San Augustine. I mentioned San Augustine. Rebecca Leffer with Christus right here in town, and then Taylor Shelton with the city of Beaumont, or city of Nacogdoches. Most folks know us and see us responding to disasters. Those would be hurricanes. Lynn mentioned something about responding or deploying. Probably my hardest deployment of the last 5 or 6 years was wildfires in California. I was in a place called Butte County, and I was more specifically in a city called Paradise. And there was 83 deaths in Paradise. And that was a very, very difficult situation. I also responded to the Santa Fe High School shootings and spent about 3 weeks there, and the day of, and matter of fact, the time after that. Those are difficult situations that we find ourselves in, but we continue to serve the community because the community need is greater at that point in time than any time before. As you can see, 60,000 disasters. Most of those are house fires. So if you go back a year and a half, and those chapters, those counties I talked about, we've had somewhere around 570 house fires in those communities. iHeartMedia is real good about it. KFDM is real good about it. But a lot of times they'll do a report on a house fire, and they'll also say right there at the last, or put a little blurb up, or Harold Mann or Jim Love will say something, and American Red Cross is also responding. The thing we do day in and day out is we respond to house fires. We provide emergency food, clothing, shelter to that family. And we do that on a regular basis. Unfortunately, because of all the disasters we've had, and we saw this after Harvey, we saw it after Imelda, and we saw it after Laura and Delta, we see this huge spike in house fires that happen after those disasters. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One of the reasons for that we see is a lot of folks are repairing their homes. One, they're storing a lot of things in the garage probably they shouldn't be storing. And two, they're doing a lot of electrical work on the home they probably shouldn't be doing. And so we end up creating a lot of house fires, multifamily fires and house fires as well. And we respond to those, and we respond, and when I say we, I really mean our volunteers. We call them disaster action teams. If you look at all the folks running around this Red Cross, on TV, or they got the vest, you saw the vest earlier, or his shirt like this or something like that. 90% of folks you see running around with Red Cross are volunteers. They are the heart and soul and the workforce of the Red Cross. Without Red volunteers, there is no Red Cross. I mean, there's very few of folks like me that's really a staff that really works for the organization. The vast majority of individuals are particularly in a disaster, when you have a Harvey, or you have a California wildfire, you have a Florence or an Imelda, or whatever the case is, there's huge individuals coming in from all over the country who respond to that. The vast majority of those individuals are volunteers. They come in and they volunteer just to respond to disasters like that. And I may end up working for a volunteer. I'll report to a volunteer that's heading up that disaster operation. And they are the heart and soul of what we try to do at the Red Cross. I mentioned house fires. There's this 866 number. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There's a house fire. Particularly once you get up in DPS sections, you have a lot of local volunteer fire departments. And so they know to call this number. They call this number immediately. If they don't call it, the family can call it, a neighbor can call it. A lot of times they'll end up calling me, and then we'll get them connected. This is kind of like our dispatch center. We'll dispatch our disaster action teams out. Now, COVID's changed a little bit the way we've had to do things. We've done, as y'all are doing now, more virtual as well. We're doing electronic funds transfer, so we can get that directly into their hand, their funds into their hands more quickly than we've ever done before. And so we've had to change our processes. We've had to change the way we do things because of the issues of COVID. The same thing true with the disasters. With Hurricane Laura, even the tornadoes on Alaska, or Hurricane Hannah down in South Texas. One of the biggest things we do during disasters is several things. One is we provide shelter and shelter operations. Normally we would do that in a civic center. You saw with Harvey, we had 1,000 folks in the Beaumont Civic Center. We had 500 folks at the Montaigne Center that were maintained before we lost the water here in Beaumont. We evacuated everybody out. Normally we do that in the big facilities. Because of COVID, we can't do that. And so we started sheltering everybody in hotels and in motels, so we could individually segregate them out into rooms, the family components. We did health departments there, health checks, temperature checks, all the sort of things. We had to do social distancing. We provide feeding operations. We had to do a feeding operation very, very differently because of the concerns with COVID. Just because we had COVID didn't mean disasters went away, right? I mean, then the daily things of life continue to go on. And so we had to continue to find a different way to respond than we had ever responded before. And so it was a challenge. And it was a challenge. We've seen this with our nonprofits. You know, the challenge they had to continue to provide their service, the food bank, continue to provide their service, even in challenging times. With Deborah and with the Southeast Tech Nonprofit Development Center. I was on a call, 2 weeks ago, the Lamar University Civic Engagement Initiative. What a phenomenal thing for our community. Thank you very much. And to be a part of that. But we've had to do it. It was all Zoom. It was all different. All my board meetings are all virtual, as you're virtual now as well. I know everybody cannot wait until we can get back together again. My board cannot. I mean, they just are, you know. So part of that is, how do we continue to do what we have to do? How do we continue to carry out that mission, irrespective of what else is happening around us? And that's been a challenge, because the vast majority of our staff are volunteers, and a lot of those are retirees. And so they're very concerned about health issues. They're very concerned about, they have underlying health issues, very concerned about catching COVID, or the COVID concerns and COVID impact. Fortunate enough, here over the last several months, we've been able to get all our frontline staff and all our volunteers vaccinated. And that's been a huge help. And I appreciate our county judges and our health departments helping us get that happen, get that done. And since I mentioned, I'm all over the place with stuff, but since I mentioned this, one of the things that we're extremely fortunate about here in Southeast Texas, and some of this is because of OJT, on the job training, is we have a very good group of county judges, CEOs. By law, county judges are the CEO during a disaster, along with our mayors. So when a disaster happens, there's things that change because of the law. We're very fortunate with Jeff Brannick, with John Gauthier, Wayne McDaniel, Judge Weeks, Mark Allen, Judge Murphy, Judge Blanchette, and all our others, because they've been through it. They've been through it time and time again. Even with John, who's fairly relative new as a county judge, has been on my chapter board for a number of years, and responded even when he was working in the refinery, on the refinery side. And so we're fortunate to have not only our county judges, but our mayors, but also our emergency managers. Big Tim here in Beaumont, or Mike White, or Aaron Tupper, or Joel, our Billy Ted, all these emergency managers we have. And the reason they're so good is because they've done it for a long time. And they've done it at a very high level, and they've done it in a very high rate. So we're fortunate here to have some of the very best from a disaster response perspective and a recovery perspective, county judges and emergency managers that know what they're doing, because they have to. We have no choice, and so they're very good at that. I'm sure everybody's seen these numbers. Everybody's seen these? Not good. Not good. We're going to have a very active season, unfortunately, again. We've kind of been in this we've got this multi-lane highway that's coming right through the Gulf, and it kind of is pointed right at the Louisiana-Texas state line. It's kind of where its target is, unfortunately. 17 named storms, 8 hurricanes, 4 majors, way above average. That doesn't mean we're going to get a hurricane, but for us, it's not if, it's when. So we have to be prepared. We have no choice. We just absolutely have to be. I mean, our community depends on us. We have to. The impact on these communities is significant, and it's one of the challenges I think we have is we look at these storms as individuals, but I think we have to look at the cumulative effect that storm after storm has had on our community. It's had on our psyche of our community. It's had on the mental health of our community. It's not just the physical impact, but it's the mental impact that these storms have had over and over again. I can't tell you how many homes I've been into, thousands, and individuals I've talked to, and I continue to talk to and continue to see, even during COVID. And it's real. I mean, this is a real deal. This is a real situation. So one is we can't let our guard down. Even as we come out of COVID, as we become being able to take off our mask a little bit and be able to meet virtually or meet in person, we could continue to be diligent. We got to make sure we continue to prepare. Technically, hurricane season starts June 1. Last year, it started really in May. And it went all the way to November. So really our seasons from May to November is kind of our time, our window that we look at when we're mostly impacted. And so we just got to make sure we're aware and that we continue to do things that we need to do to make sure our community is ready for those impacts. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Phenomenal. That's great. You know, the one thing I would leave you with this is evacuations. Now the judge, judges the issue and the mayors issue evacuation orders. Sometimes they're voluntary, sometimes they're mandatory. The one thing I would leave you with is this on this issue. If there's an official order to evacuate, please, with all my heart, please evacuate. Don't stay unless you absolutely have to, unless your job requires you to, or there's a situation where you have to stay. Don't stay. Evacuate, because it just becomes very, very difficult for our first responders to have to respond to families who are in deep stress because they stayed and they're in big trouble now. And it puts them in harm's way when they shouldn't have to be. So please, 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 if you take nothing else out of this presentation, if there's an evacuation order, please do, if you can. Uh-oh, we lost it. Come back. I mentioned the service to armed forces. There's some flyers on your table. The very top one, for the most of you, a lot of them, it says the Southeast Texas Stand Down. That's going to be Friday, May the 14th. We're doing a big event this is something we've done for the last 6 or 7 years. This is going to be at the Bob Bowers of the Port Arthur Civic Center. And we're going to be providing about 60 nonprofits all coming together, along with about 14 veteran service organizations, a number of health agencies, a number of other non-related profit agencies that serve our veterans, our families, our armed services men and women, and our community at large. They're all coming together at one place at one time to serve our veterans in our community. We'll be doing it within the CDC protocols, cover, distance, clean. We'll be wearing masks. The Port Arthur Health Department will do health checks as we come in. We'll be doing temperature checks. There'll be one way in and one way out. There'll be covers between the vendors, as well as covers between the rows. And so we're going to do everything we can to make sure we're protecting our community and protecting our veterans and their families. But at the same time, we recognize and understand their needs today more than ever before are so great. And we need to be providing these services and bring these services together. We're also going to be that day, the Port Arthur Transit Authority is going to be providing free transit service for all our veterans that are coming to the event. We're also going to be doing ride share locations at various churches throughout the greater Port Arthur area for this as well. There'll be another one of these events we'll do in August in Orange, and then one in September in Beaumont. It's very difficult for us and for our veterans to get access to services because they have to go to a lot of different places. You got the outpatient clinic, you got the vet center, you got the military veteran peer network, you got Texas Veterans Commission, then you got to go all the way to Houston. I have to go to Houston quite a bit. And so part of that is, is there a way we can bring all those services, all those resources together at one place at one time for our veterans and their veteran community? They deserve nothing less. They deserve nothing better from us. And so that's what this event is about. If you're interested, please come by. If you're interested in volunteering, let me know. We'd love to have you. It should be a great event. We'll do a very short opening ceremony. We'll post the colors. We'll say a few words in it, but it really is about veterans and their family and the services that we need to be providing them. This is the information on the stand down. Obviously, there's two things that really make up Red Cross and what Red Cross is all about. One is our volunteers. I've talked a lot about volunteers, and the other is fundraising. Red Cross is a nonprofit, just like any other nonprofit. One of the things that we do, going back to our service to the armed forces, we have a call center. It's an 877 number. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Our armed services men and women can call that number. Our family members can call that number. Or folks in the community can call that number if they see there's a veteran or armed services men and women in need. We provide that service directly for the Department of Defense. We have for many, 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 many years. Like I said, we continue to provide offices. So when I was at Fort Bragg, there's a Red Cross office there. If you go to Germany, there's Red Cross's office there. If you go to Afghanistan or Baghdad, there's a Red Cross office there. And we have individuals that are employed there. that we employ on a 6-month kind of rotating deal to continue to provide those services to our men and women during peacetime or during wartime. And it's so critically needed because a lot of times family members, particularly if it's a first-time individual in the services, don't know where to turn or who to call. They can always call Red Cross. They can always call Red Cross. Then when the hurricane hit Florida, remember the Air Force base there was basically wiped off the map down there. So before I got deployed a week later, 2 days later after the storm hit, there was a young man, 19 years old, and his mom walked into my office right here in Beaumont. And he said he was at that base. And they all just evacuated. They all left. He said he don't have any money. He doesn't have any orders. Doesn't have any equipment. Doesn't have anything. He just shows up. And he says, and he's got his cell phone. He's got his cell phone. And he's got a text message from the first sergeant. The first sergeant says, I don't know what to tell you, but go see Red Cross. And that's what they did. And so we provided those direct services to him, and we continue to do that. Same thing with the Coast Guard. Remember when we got in trouble here recently, a few years ago, when our Coast Guard wasn't getting paid, nor were our fellow prison getting federal because of the federal budget. You know, we were providing those services to those facilities, to those individuals as well. So there's a lot on that side of the house. Very few folks don't know about unless you have somebody in the military or you're part of the military. Your family was. That's something that's a huge part of the organization and something we do and something we're very, very proud of. And obviously we talked about volunteer and volunteerism. And I'm gonna wrap up right here in just a minute. You know, our two biggest needs are actually there's a flyer there about volunteering at the Red Cross. And it's really not about volunteering at the Red Cross, it's about volunteering anywhere. You know, you volunteer at the food bank, you know, volunteer at United Way, volunteer with the Salvation Army, you know, volunteer with Nutrition and Services for Seniors or some other place, whatever those organizations are, United Board of Mission. Catholic Charities is one of the huge ones that we work a lot with, you know, the diocese. You know, it really is about, because they're all the same, it's all the same challenges and issues that they have, Red Cross has, is the heart and soul of our workforce is our volunteers. And they're more needed now than ever before, and particularly in our communities because of the greater need. Because and not only COVID didn't create the needs and challenges of our community, it just exacerbated it. It's all COVID did. And we continue to see that. We still have folks. So Harvey was almost 4 years ago. We still have folks trying to rebuild their homes from Harvey. Not one or two homes. I'm talking about hundreds upon hundreds of homes because they've been impacted again and again. And so we've still got a lot of folks out there. They're still trying to rebuild their lives, you know, after these disasters. And then we see this report that comes from Colorado State, you know, with another one's, you know, the potential impact that they have. So please take the opportunity to volunteer. If you don't, somewhere, not Red Cross, somewhere else, because there is such a great need. The only thing I want to say really about this, now I'm going to end it with that. I'm going to go all the way to my last slide real quick. The only thing I'll say about this, one of the things that Red Cross also does, and we do this with our volunteer fire departments, is one of the biggest things because of the house fire numbers. The biggest thing, 80% of disasters we respond to are house fires, single family or multifamily fires. Well, we know the greatest thing that can help us is being prepared for a disaster, tornadoes a little bit harder, or flooding. You know, be prepared. Same thing for a house fire. There's a sheet of paper talking about have a plan. You know what you're going to do if there is a fire. But the biggest thing we also know is make sure you've got what? Working smoke alarms. That's the biggest thing you can do. So one of the things that we started a number of years ago, working with our local fire departments, with Home Depot and others, is start installing smoke alarms into homes. These are the 10-year lithium battery ones. And so you don't have to change them out. You know, and so we've been doing that across the nation. And that's really what this is about, because it really is about making homes safer. So we may lose a home, but let's not lose the family. Let's not lose the family. The home can be replaced, the family can't. So the biggest part of that is making sure, so every anniversary, whatever the anniversary, the time change, whatever, check your batteries. But if you don't, get those 10-year lithium battery ones. They're phenomenal. We've put a lot of them up. Now, obviously, COVID has changed the way we'd have to do it. So it is about making sure we have a plan, making sure you know what to do in case of an emergency, be it a hurricane or be it a house fire, and making sure you're being prepared. So that's what this is all about. It really is about we call it our National Sound the Alarm. It's about saving a life. And then the home fire checklist, which these are things we intuitively know. Same thing about being prepared for a hurricane. We intuitively know what we need to do. We just need to make sure we have to do it. And the thing I'll wrap up on the house fires, along with that emergency food, clothing, and shelter with the house fires that we respond to. If that family lost prescription medicine during the fire, we'll replace that prescription medicine. If they lost prescription glasses, we'll replace that. If they lost adapted devices, we'll replace that as well. And then for the next 30 days, we'll follow that family. We'll also provide mental health services counseling to that family as well. Also, unfortunately, if there's a death in that family, we'll provide financial assistance to that family for burial assistance as well. So there's a lot we do on that side of the house that it's kind of like the service to armed forces. A lot of folks are just not aware of unless you've been directly impacted by that. I want to thank you. I want to thank what this club does and continues to do every day, what you do in the community. The difference you make is nothing short of remarkable. So thank you for your service to this community, and your service to our nation. And thank you very much. And God bless Beaumont, Texas.
Thank you, Chester. There's a little time for questions. Do we have any questions for Chester? He'll be around just a little bit after the meeting if you want to ask him anything. I don't know about you, but I learned some new things today. I didn't realize that the Red Cross was so actively involved with our service members and our veterans. And that, I mean, you've been everywhere, Chester, and it takes a big heart to see some of the things that you've done, places you've been, and still be there for those families that really need you. So we appreciate you and all that the Red Cross does for our communities. The Rotary International Foundation has 7 areas of focus, and Red Cross hits about 5 of them. So in your honor, we're going to make a donation to the Rotary International Foundation. And thanks for you coming here to spend time with us today. In closing, our speaker next week will carry on the good news about the hurricane season. Little sneak peek here from Chester. So join us as Chris Abear with Storm Geo tells us what's going to happen and in the 2021 forecast. So let's close our meeting today by standing and reciting the things that we think, say, and do with the 4-way test. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendship? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you all for attending Rotary today, and go out and find opportunities to lead and serve. Thank you very much.
Hi.